Welcome to 10-minute Zuimonki. Dōgen taught, saying, "Those of you who practice the way should not wait for tomorrow thinking that you will practice then. Rather, you should practice today, at this very moment, without delay." Some time ago there was a man living nearby with his family who had long been afflicted by illness. In the spring of the previous year he made me a promise. "Once I recover, I will leave behind my wife and children and build myself a small hut near the monastery. Twice each month I will attend the ceremony for renewing the precepts. Every day I will devote myself to practice, read and listen to teachings on the Dharma, and, to the best of my ability, live in accordance with the precepts," he said. After some time, various treatments seemed to improve his condition, but before long his health deteriorated again and he spent his days in pain. Then, shortly after the New Year, his illness became much worse. The pain gave him no rest, and he was no longer able to build the hut or gather the materials he had planned to use. Instead, he rented a small dwelling from others, yet within less than 2 months he passed away. On the evening before his death he received the Bodhisattva precepts and took refuge in the Three Treasures. It was fortunate that he died peacefully, free from concern for household affairs, and no longer attached to his wife and children. Yet, how much better it would have been had he left his family a year earlier, settled near the monastery, joined the life of the community, and devoted himself to practicing the way. This strengthened my conviction that practice should never be postponed. If you are ill and think that you must first recover before dedicating yourself wholeheartedly to practice, this is a sign that the mind of awakening is weak within you. The body is merely a temporary harmony of the 4 great elements, and it takes very little for illness to arise. The ancient masters, too, were people of flesh and blood. All that is required is that you arouse a strong determination, forget all other concerns, and devote yourself to practice. When confronted with something truly important, lesser worries are naturally forgotten. Therefore, let the Buddha way be the one great matter that must be realized during this lifetime, and do not allow time to slip through your fingers. An ancient teacher said, "Do not waste time in vain." If you seek treatment for an illness, but your condition worsens, and the pain becomes difficult to bear, then practice during those moments when the illness eases. If the pain grows more severe, practice before the illness threatens your life, and if it comes to threaten your life, then practice before death arrives. Sometimes illness improves and sometimes it grows worse. At times a sickness heals if left alone. At other times our attempts to cure it only cause greater harm. You should keep this in mind. Do not wait until you have prepared a place for practice, acquired begging bowls, robes, and all the necessary equipment before you begin to practice. If you are poor, do not waste your days running here and there in pursuit of such things. Even if you possess no robes, no begging bowls, and none of the usual implements, your days are still numbered. To wait for the proper equipment or the ideal place to practice is only to waste your life. Even without robes and bows, you should practice the way, whether as a monk or as a lay follower. Robes and bows are merely the outward adornments of a monk. The true Buddha way does not depend on them. If you happen to acquire such things, use them properly, but do not chase after them at all costs, nor should you reject them when they come into your possession. Furthermore, even when an illness can be treated, to refuse medicine and simply resign yourself to death is the view of those outside the Buddha way. In Buddhism it is said, "You must not cling to life, but neither must you throw it away." If treatment is necessary, undergo moxibustion or take an appropriate remedy. Such things do not hinder practice. What hinders practice is postponing it while making the care of your illness your primary concern. Today's passage addresses one of the most common obstacles to our practice. It is not laziness, it is not doubt, it is not even attachment, it is postponement. Dōgen begins with a simple instruction. Those of you who practice the way should not wait for tomorrow thinking that you will practice then. You should practice today, right now, without delay. At first glance this seems obvious. Of course we should practice now rather than later. But if we look carefully at our own lives, we may discover that postponement is one of the mind's favorite habits. We like to tell ourselves, "I'll practice when things settle down. I'll practice when work becomes less demanding. I'll practice when my health improves. I'll practice when I have more time. I'll practice when circumstances are better. The problem is that life rarely becomes simpler. As soon as one obstacle disappears, another takes its place. Tomorrow becomes next month becomes next year, and eventually years have passed. To illustrate this, Dōgen tells the story of a man who had been ill for a long time. The man sincerely intended to devote himself to practice. He planned to leave behind worldly concerns, build a small hut near the monastery, participate in the community, listen to Dharma talks, observe the precepts, and dedicate his remaining years to the way. His intention was admirable. The only problem was that he kept waiting. First he wanted to recover. Then he wanted to make proper arrangements. Then he wanted to prepare the conditions. But his illness worsened. Eventually, he rented a small hut hoping to begin the life he had imagined. Within 2 months he was dead. To be clear, Dōgen is not criticizing the man. In fact, he praises him for receiving the precepts and taking refuge before his death. What affected Dōgen was something else. The realization that the man had lost an entire year waiting for a future that never arrived. That experience convinced Dōgen never to postpone practice. And this is where the teaching becomes deeply personal. Most of us imagine that we have more time than we actually do. We think of practice as something we will eventually get around to. But the truth is that none of us knows how much time remains. The future exists only in imagination. The present is the only place where practice can occur. Dōgen then addresses another common excuse, illness. Many people think, once I recover, then I will practice seriously. Dōgen says that this attitude reflects a lack of awakening mind. Why? Because the body is inherently unstable. It is made of the 4 elements and can fall ill at any moment. Even if we recover from one illness, another may arise. Even if we become healthy today, we will not remain healthy forever. The ancient masters were not superhuman. They were flesh and blood just like us. They experienced pain, sickness, aging, yet they practiced. Dōgen's point is not that illness does not matter. His point is that practice cannot depend upon perfect health. If it does, practice may never begin. Then he offers a striking observation. When we are devoted to something truly important, smaller concerns often fall away. Think of moments in your own life when something deeply meaningful demanded your attention. Perhaps caring for a loved one, perhaps responding to a crisis, perhaps pursuing something you valued above everything else. In such moments, many lesser worries disappear. Dōgen is asking us to make the Buddha way that kind of priority. Not because practice is another item on our schedule, but because realizing the way is the most important matter of our lives. He then becomes even more practical. If your illness is mild, practice during the time when it eases. If your condition worsens, practice before it becomes life-threatening. If death approaches, practice before you die. This may sound severe, but there is also great compassion in it. Dōgen is freeing us from the belief that we need ideal circumstances before we can begin. Whatever condition we find ourselves in, there is still some way to practice. There is still some way to turn toward the way, and there is still some opportunity available and in this very moment. The same principle applies to material conditions. People often think, I need the proper clothing, I need the proper place to practice, I need to organize my life first. Dōgen rejects this completely. He says that even without robes, bows, or formal monastic equipment, one should practice. These things may have their place, they may support practice, but they are not practice itself. The Buddha way does not depend upon possessions. It depends upon commitment. Finally, Dōgen addresses a misunderstanding that can sometimes arise in religious life. He warns against neglecting medical treatment and simply resigning oneself to death. That, he says, is not the Buddha way. The Buddha way neither clings desperately to life nor throws life away carelessly. If medicine is needed, take medicine. If treatment is helpful, receive treatment. There is nothing unspiritual about caring for the body. The problem arises only when concern for the body causes us to abandon practice. In the end, the entire passage can be summed up in a single question. What are you waiting for? Better health? More time? More knowledge? Better circumstances? More certainty? Dōgen's answer is simple. Practice now. Practice with the body you have. Practice with the circumstances you have. Practice with the time you have. Because the only moment in which the way can be practiced is this one. Thank you for listening. Until next time.